Hi, and welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast. From nice to real, breaking free of the nice guy syndrome in a relationship episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I coach men who are done suffering in their relationships, men who want deeper love, real connection, and to finally feel like themselves again. I help them become the best version of themselves and for their current relationship or the one they're ready to find so they can live the life they love. So this episode is for the guy who's always been told he's a nice guy or a great guy, but somehow things still fall apart. You know, he gives, he sacrifices, he avoids conflict, he keeps the peace, and yet his relationships are filled with frustration. They're unfulfilling, and often it's like they're slipping through his fingers. Now, if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. I've been a nice guy. I know. And more importantly, fellas, it's not your fault. The good news is there is a way to move beyond the nice guy syndrome. So what is the nice guy syndrome? It's a term that was popularized by Dr. Robert Glover in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And despite the name, this isn't about men being too nice, okay? It's about men being inauthentically nice because they're driven by fear, shame, guilt, and the unconscious belief that love has to be earned by getting someone's approval. Here are some nice guy behaviors, and see if you recognize any of these within yourself, or I'm sure you'll know someone with these behaviors, okay? So the nice guy avoids conflict at all costs. He withholds his own needs, his own desires, and his own opinions. He tries to be what others want him to be. He seeks validation through fixing the problem or caretaking. And he believes that as long as I'm a good boy, if I'm good, I'll be loved. Any of this sound familiar? Yeah, so what's underneath this kind of behavior, this nice guy syndrome? Usually it's a deep fear of rejection or abandonment, or being seen as selfish, or that they're not enough just the way they are. And even though the nice guy may seem easygoing or generous, what's often underneath it is a lot of resentment, passive aggression, and even a subtle manipulation, doing nice things in hopes that they'll get love or sex or get some kind of approval in return, not for the simple sake of being nice. So where does this come from? Well, the research suggests that many men develop the nice guy traits as kind of a survival technique or as a way to adapt to certain situations in childhood. Maybe dad was overly critical or emotionally unavailable, so being a good boy became a way to stay out of trouble. Or maybe mom was too dependent on her son for emotional support, and he learned he had to abandon his own needs to keep others happy. And I know as a kid, I parentified my father after the loss of my mother and oldest brother within a year's time. But he never checked in with me and how I was doing. And I learned later in life that what was happening to me was I was suppressing my needs to be there for him. And I just thought that's what I had to do. Now, in some cases, the nice guy syndrome can come from being rejected or shamed as a child, where he has to disconnect from his authentic true self and replace it with a more refined, people-pleasing self-image. And as they grow up into adulthood, this creates men who seem to be agreeable but feel deeply disconnected, especially in romantic relationships, where authenticity, intimacy, and healthy boundaries are essential. Here's a story to help illustrate the whole nice guy syndrome. It's Brad's story, and all the names are changed, of course. Brad was struggling in his relationship with Jen, his partner for, 5 years. She said that he was a good man, he was supportive, responsible, never yelled, but she didn't really feel him. In her eyes, he was always like performing, doing what he thought she wanted, but never really letting her in. And Jen told him that she felt alone emotionally in the relationship. And after hearing this, Brad was heartbroken. He was like, I do everything for her. I never complain. I'm not like one of these jerks you used to date. Why isn't that enough for her? Well, as Brad did the work, it came up that he had learned early in life that setting boundaries was considered selfish. And his mom modeled that being honest about her feelings and what she needed might upset someone, and he couldn't handle that. And he witnessed that the few times his mom would advocate for herself in front of him, and his dad would yell and scream at her. So Brad learned vicariously through his mom not to do it himself, not to say things that would upset his dad, right? So fast forward to Jen. Instead of telling her what he really felt, he'd stuff it down like he did as a kid. And if she said something that hurt, he would just say, I'm fine, I'm all right, when he really wasn't all right. And if she crossed the line, he would just eat it and carry on. No big deal. But over time, he started to feel invisible in the relationship. And Jen felt emotionally disconnected. Here's the breakthrough. With having this new awareness, Brad began practicing honesty in small ways. He also started to identify his feelings, even when they were messy. He learned to set boundaries, not with anger or force, but with a calm and firm position. And this was really hard for Brad at first. And he got better at it as he started to see how effective it was. He started to feel more empowered, feeling like himself again. He stopped over-apologizing. He started asking for what he needed without guilt or shame. And the first time he said to Jen, "Nope, I need some time to myself tonight," Jen didn't freak out. In fact, she respected him more because he was finally showing up as himself, not some polished version of the perfect boyfriend. Now, they had some really tough conversations, and it wasn't easy for them. But the thing is, it was the first time they were actually connecting on a deep level, being honest and real with each other. And that is where the true healing of their relationship began. Brad's awareness of his nice guy tendencies and doing the work made all the difference. Now, Brad's still a nice guy who now sets boundaries, advocates for himself, says what he feels and needs, and he's much more confident and has a deeper sense of connection and compassion. So, how do you get from nice to real? What does it take to break free of the nice guy syndrome? Well, it doesn't mean becoming a rude, selfish, or emotionally attached asshole. No. It simply means being real, which is not so simple for some folks, where being real is a learned behavior, and it can be really scary for them. And that's okay. It's part of the process. And if you're a nice guy, believe me, you're not alone. I know firsthand because I had these nice guy tendencies as well. So, what does being real mean? It means setting boundaries and doing it by being kind and direct, not wishy-washy or aggressive. It's expressing your needs and doing it without shame or guilt. You are entitled to ask for what you need, and it's vital in a relationship if you want it to work for the long term. And let go of the idea that love has to be earned by being good enough. Man, you're already good enough just being you. And let people see your flaws, your opinions, and your truth. Man, when I'm on video, I see all my flaws, man. My bald head, my teeth, and everything, my old age, whatever. We've all got these flaws. We've got our opinions, and we have our own truths. So you have a right to have yours, okay? So just be you. And the thing about being real is that the more real or authentic you become, the more trust, intimacy, and attraction you will create. Most women aren't looking for perfection, guys. They want a man who can be open and honest with their emotions, to be present, and to advocate for themselves, to be real and still care deeply. Now, if you're listening to this and you're seeing yourself in Brad or seeing yourself as a nice guy, I'm going to give you 3 steps you can actually take today. And they're in no particular order, by the way, but we'll start with the first step. Name one need that you've been hiding. Like I talked about in the last episode about secrets. Name one need and say it out loud, even if it's just to yourself. Get used to the idea. And then when you're used to it, you can share one thing you've been hiding. The next step is set one small boundary this week, even if, or especially if it feels uncomfortable. You've got to get out of your comfort zone to make any change stick, okay? And the third step is to look at where in your life you perform or you pretend to be this nice guy rather than showing up as your full, true self. And this isn't about overcorrecting and becoming an asshole, right? It's about aligning your actions with your values, what matters to you, and letting go of the fear that simply being you, your true authentic self, isn't enough. No, you are absolutely enough. Everyone is. And listen, if you've been the nice guy, don't beat yourself up or shame yourself for it. You're doing the best you can with what you've learned or had modeled for you, like Brad. And now, with having this awareness, it's your chance to do better. You get to change this pattern and upgrade to a new one. You get to break the cycle, man. Going from people-pleasing to being real with yourself and with your partner. Going from nice to real. I'm going to sum up this whole nice guy syndrome with a quote from Dr. Robert Glover, who came up with the term and who I referenced earlier. He's the author of the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. He says, quote, "Recovery from the nice guy syndrome involves reclaiming one's personal power, learning to set boundaries, and living authentically," unquote. And there you go. And listen, if you'd like some support in this work, because I know it's hard, let's talk. You don't have to figure it all out alone. You can reach me through my website, menonthepathtolove.com. And that will do it for this episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, From Nice to Real, Breaking Free from the Nice Guy Syndrome in Relationship episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. Thanks so much for listening. I do appreciate it. Now, coming up next time on the Men on the Path to Love podcast, after working in a health clinic for 10 years, I've noticed a couple of things. The majority of patients we see are women. And when I talk to the women in my practice, I hear over and over about how the men they love are not taking care of themselves. They don't go to the doctor, they don't eat right, they don't talk about their emotions, blah, 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 blah. And it's, again, what I say a lot, it's our conditioning, unfortunately. Well, on the next episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, I'm going to shed some light on the importance of self-care and how it can make your relationship so much better. Some of it's just common sense, and there could be some things you might not realize. So please join me for How Taking Care of Yourself Strengthens Your Relationship episode. And if this nice guy episode spoke to you, well, please share it with a nice guy in your life who needs to hear it. All right? Yeah, share the link to this podcast and share the love. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.